把我们在5月这3天的非常非常密集的行程呢，能够跟大家做一个简单的介绍。接下来呢，我们就以我们热烈的掌声，邀请我们的全球的 CIO 洪林阳先生。
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure being here. And I think this is the second time I've been to Taiwan this year. And just so that you do know, I do consider myself local. I am our corporate CIO, but I am located in Beijing. So what that means is, I know many of you know Dali and the rest of the Informatica team here in Beijing. But if there's questions or issues, concerns, you can always feel free to talk to Dali and the team, but I'm close by, and I'm going to come be here many times a year to see friends, and but also I'm here for you to help in any of your needs, and I'm here to support our team. This region is this important to Informatica. In fact, I talked to many software company country managers. No software company that I know has relocated any of the corporate executives into this region. And we're the first that I'm aware of, but this is really demonstrating Informatica's commitment to overall Greater China. So, and if I was in Beijing, I would say, 我是北京人. I would say now, how would I say here? 我是台湾人. Taipei人. So I do take a little bit of lessons. So if you talk badly about me in Chinese, I may understand what you're saying. So be careful. So in today's talk, I am a CIO. I'm an IT person, just like most of you are from IT. And the way I would think about this presentation is just think about it as we're at work and we're just having a conversation among peers. And this is a conversation we're having. And even though I come from a software company and our business is to sell software, first and foremost, I would think of myself as an IT professional. And so with that in mind, the conversation that we're going to have today really is for myself as an IT professional. And I have this conversation, I have the privilege in my role to travel the globe and meet with lots of CIOs. And I can give you lots of CIO perspectives from many of our peers. And the one conversation that many of us inevitably have is what is the most important thing that we should focus on in IT? And I remember the CIO of Cardinal Health, this is a $40 billion US company, telling me, she says, the #1 reason you get fired is uptime, right? Your systems aren't up to you. So I'd say, okay, that's great. So I don't want to come to work just for uptime. I said, what gets you promoted? What is the second most important reason you come to work? And we settled on this idea that our ability to contribute to innovation in the company is what's going to get you promoted. So remember, uptime, if you're not uptime, you get fired. But if you can innovate, they get you promoted. Okay, so it's that simple IT formula. And as I talk to my friends, they say, so what does innovation really mean in your business? And what do we do to innovate in IT? And I talked to my friend Mark Egan. Well, he's the CIO of VMware. Paul Martin, he's the CIO at Citrix Systems. I said, okay, infrastructure, that's important. Or I talked to Sanjay Marchandani, he's the CIO over at EMC. And we say, storage is important. And we all agree, even these guys, it's not. It doesn't make a difference in our business. Yeah, virtualization may save you money. You might negotiate well with your storage provider. But ultimately, none of these things are strategic to what you do in IT. Then if I go up the stack from infrastructure, I go up the stack to, let's just say, applications. You talk to Mark Sunday over at Oracle. Can an ERP give you a competitive advantage? It cannot. So even what you're seeing at the application layer, especially with the advent of software as a service, most of the things that we do at the apps layer, and I'm an apps guy by trade, it's commoditized. It can't drive differentiation in our business. And you say, well, what is that thing that really makes that difference in what we do? The difference that we do, that we can do in IT, the thing that where we really can drive that sustainable competitive advantage is around information. It's about your data. And how are you able to take the data in your enterprise and make sure that whether it's analytics or making sure that it's at the point of need, that you can help drive differentiation. And this is what we're going to talk about today. And as one of my peers told me, he said, look, if you're not doing this, your successor will. Your successor will be taking care of the data assets in your company. So this is a lot of what our conversation is about today. It's this concept of what Informatica will call return on data. It's your ability to get the most value out of your information, whether it's increasing the value of the data in the organization or lowering the cost of the data in your organization. And we'll go through some real examples of what customers are doing. So, but none of us are in the business of IT. The reason we're in IT is so that we can support the business objectives that we have in our company. So, and if you look across the top of the slide, these are common business objectives for many of us. It's improving decision making, it's modernization, improving efficiency, or acquiring and retaining customers. You know, we were just having some lunch with folks from the telecom industry, and I've met with several telecom providers around the world. You know, acquiring and retaining customers is one of the key metrics that they have in this industry. And a lot of the products, and I'm not sure specifically about Taiwan, but around the world, a lot of the telecom providers look at what they offer as commoditizing. In fact, they're looking at themselves not as a telecom business, but they're in an information business. Their ability to acquire and retain customers is much more about how they can create new products faster than the competition, new offers. How do they not just attract the individual, but the family, and how about tapping into the Facebook and understanding the network of friends, and how do we offer out to them? So these are the information products that people are looking at doing. Now the challenge that many of us have, and as IT professionals, when we talk to the executives in our company, we want to hit these type of objectives for our corporate initiatives, is you look at the data at the bottom. The data is down in transactional systems. It's in the desktops of the world. It might be on-premise, but additionally, and what's becoming more prevalent, it could be on the cloud. It's on mobile devices. It's also in your interaction systems. So the Facebooks, the Twitters, the LinkedIns of the world. Or if you're in Greater China, it could be Sina, it could be in Weibo. But a lot of the information that we want and how we can actually leverage it just doesn't need to sit in the four walls of our company. It's all over now. And so what we offer as a company, we have 8 product categories to help you increase either the value of the data or also lower the overall cost of the data. And the cost could be around labor costs, software, hardware, and storage. So this is what we are about as a company. This is that return on data that we're helping our customers try to achieve. Rather than just taking my word for it, we can look at real life examples. And I won't go through every example. I know I'm sure all of you would like me to go through every example in painful detail. I won't do that. I'll just use just one example in the slide. And let's look at Merrill Lynch in the middle of the slide. Because when I talk to a lot of IT professionals, they'll ask me, so how do I put numbers around things? I want to understand, how do I actually quantify value? I'll give you an example with Merrill. So Merrill, as many of you know, deals with a lot of high net worth individuals. They have 15,000 financial analysts around the world. And what they did was they commissioned one of those very large consulting firms to say, help us analyze how our analysts spend their time. Because these guys are paid very highly, but they want to optimize the time. What they found was that 70% of the analyst's time was spent in back office functions. You said, well, why? Merrill is a classic example of a company that had what we would call an account-centric point of view. So I have this account, I have this brokerage account, I have this maybe 401k or multiple different accounts. And so what an analyst would want to do, because it's you as a customer of Merrill, you want to know that they have a relationship with you. So before the financial analyst actually calls, what they want to make sure is they have a full view of the customer so they know who the customer is. So what they did was, with Informatica, they took a step back and they said, what we're going to do is we're not going to take an account-centric point of view, we're going to take a customer-centric point of view. And now when you call Merrill, what they do is they are now looking at you holistically across all of the different accounts that they have as a customer. What this resulted in is that 70% back office time went to 30% and increased their productivity by 10%. And I'm sure if we could quantify 10% productivity levels, that is a true return on data. And the same here when we're looking at lowering the cost of data. There's several examples of people being able to use other technologies to save money, whether it's on labor, whether it's on software or hardware. But lots of examples. I'm sure Dolly can help any of you or the rest of the sales team can talk to you about examples that are relevant to your industry. We have multiple referenceable customers around the world that can provide you a good case study for your own industry. So just a little bit, and I'm not a product person, but I will describe a little bit about our platform and what we try to provide our customers. So the history of computing, as we all know from our backgrounds, is that a lot of us had data in the four walls of the enterprise, and that's how IT looked over the years. And we had data silos that existed. It could have been in applications, it could be in structured and unstructured systems. But for many of us, we've started to leverage even the cloud. And even in Informatica, in my IT department, I have more systems in the cloud today than I actually do on premise. And we can talk about that after, but a lot of our data now has shifted. In addition to being in the cloud, a lot of us are doing business with trading partners. For example, B2B partners. So you now have data fragmented everywhere. And then also, what we also realized is data from interactions is growing much faster than transactions in our own systems, as well as devices. So every time you carry your phone, you have geolocation data. Everywhere you go, people are tracking. Well, I should be careful how I say that. But in many places you go, people understand where you are because of the geolocation data in your phone. But all of this data is extremely useful to companies around the world. We'll give you just a quick example here. This is where you happen to be at the corner. People are looking at your Twitter feeds or they're looking at your Facebook. They happen to know that you have a preference for this particular brand of product. They also happen to know that you are at this location. They happen to know the branch office is right next door. They can immediately push you an offer to go there and actually try the food, the drink, the beverage of your choice. But it's having this information at that point of need and correlating it. So this is what we're about as a company, helping you harness and master all the data that you have in your enterprise through, again, this is the 8 distinct core product categories that we have as a company. So first and foremost, in the center of the slide, this is what you know is enterprise data integration. Many of you are Power Center customers or Power Exchange customers. Our goal is to be able to move any type of data at any latency. So we always put the word any in front of any time, anywhere, any place. That's what our goal is. And then with ultra messaging, our goal is to have the fastest message bus in the world. So you're seeing the world's leading stock markets, the world's leading exchanges use our technology to move messages at the fastest rate in the world. In fact, a customer like FedEx uses ultra messaging because it's so important for them to get the package data at the right place at the right time fast. And this is why they would use our messaging product. At the bottom, you're seeing application lifecycle management. And you can think of this in two ways. The first, it's about archiving data off. So many of you have data in systems. Systems are becoming slow and lethargic. You don't want to pay Oracle more money for Oracle database licenses, or you may not want to pay EMC for more database license. What you're able to do here is archive it off to third-tier storage, save you storage space, improve your application's performance. The other thing it does is it also secures your data. What's becoming very popular is the ability to actually what we call obfuscate or make your personally identifiable data or your PCI data, anything that's sensitive, being able to encrypt it in such a way that it cannot get compromised. On the left, we have cloud data integration. This is a simple point-and-click interface for integrating systems for an end user. And on the right, we have the B2B cloud compute, or excuse me, B2B data exchange. This is your ability to take semi-structured data like PDFs, Excel files, and being able to move them and structure them. Or this could be XML formats or JSON formats, and being able to make sense of them. At the top, we have data quality. This is your ability to look at data quality, not just about company name and address or person data, but also being able to create custom dictionaries. So if you have supplier information, being able to make sure you put data quality around supplier information or product information. And complex event processing in the middle is about making data very actionable. So looking at seemingly disparate events that could occur throughout the world. So for example, several US departments within the government use this technology to actually protect US borders. And also master data management. This is that ability to get a single view of customer, single view of product, single view of supplier, whatever data domain that you choose. But all of this comes together as a platform for Informatica. Again, our job is to help you get that return on data through moving data anywhere, anytime, any latency, any type. Just think of it any. And that's what our goal is for you. But what's fueling our growth as a company is what we call these technology megatrends. Because as I've been describing, the data just isn't the data that you have on premise, but data is emerging in multiple other areas that will provide value for all of us. In fact, in many cases, I would posit that we haven't even thought of all the ways that we can use this information. So these megatrends include cloud, social, mobile. Cloud is what we call the next wave in data fragmentation. It's no longer just on premise, it's in the cloud, it's everywhere. How do I manage it? There's social computing. This is the next generation of what we call data-centric applications. So it's no longer about that transaction system you're putting in SAP. This is not just about orders, it's not just about people. These are those interactions, but it's that needle in the haystack. How do you find that seemingly innocuous message that's out there and being communicated? How do you actually find the value of it for your company? And then in mobile, this is that next surge of data access devices. I was making a joke, and I won't joke about Bob or Chow here, but I'm sure many of you, if you look at now, in fact, we didn't get the picture yesterday. We were driving along, and I always like the scooters here, and I saw someone doing, I don't have my iPhone with me, they're sitting like this on their scooter. You don't do this in many parts of the world, and they're sitting there texting and reading mail and scootering at the same time. They weren't stopped either, they were driving. They were actually driving and doing this. I was quite impressed. So the Taiwanese, if you go to Beijing and teach the Beijingers how to do this too. But anyway, many of you today, when you're using your devices, these are very personal things. How many of you get up in the morning, you're sitting there like this, what is my mail today? You know, my kid sent me a text, this is how you communicate with kids nowadays, you got to text with them. Or you say, at night, you're coming home, you're sitting there with your device, right? And I'm sure all of you are thinking, yes, this is exactly how my life is, because I thought computing was supposed to make my life easier and better. It's actually made it worse, because now work follows me everywhere. But ultimately, these megatrends have changed the what, the where, and the how of computing. So the where is, we've gone from on-premise to the cloud. And this is platform as a service, this is infrastructure as a service, this is software as a service. The what has also changed. This is the transactions. This is now becoming the interactions, and the how is what we described as these devices that we carry everywhere with us. I checked in the hotel yesterday. I said I have to hook up my computer, I have to hook up my Android phone, I have to hook up my iPhone, I have to hook up my iPad. Because all of this stuff carries us everywhere, and they all have a distinct purpose for us. What's important, though, about these megatrends, it just isn't the where, the what, it's not the form factor of the devices. It's not just the fact that you now are using a SaaS app. It's the things are changing about your data, because data doesn't exist on premise anymore. Data is now floating out in the cloud. The question is how are you going to manage all of this information? Now, all of a sudden, your customers aren't just talking to you through your customer service lines. Your customers are talking to you out in the social networks of the world. And our CMO scolded me one day because I was at the airport and I had a bad experience with the airline. I sent a tweet. And I said something not so positive about the airline. And I did this because I read this article about a company called JetBlue. I don't know if any of you know JetBlue. But JetBlue was famous because very early on, they were one of the first companies who did this. A customer went and tweeted about something negative about JetBlue. And they were monitoring the Twitter about JetBlue. A gate agent comes running up to go help the person. And they said, okay, we understand, Mr. Customer, you're having a bad situation here. Let me help you, okay? So I would do that. I used to do that. My CMO says, don't do that because all these airlines are customers. And if you do that, you may upset the customers, so don't tweet anymore about the airline. But these are the things that are happening. Your customers are saying things about you, but they're not saying them to your face anymore. They're saying behind your back. They're saying them in the social networks. And the how is changing. It's what we described. Now, the data is no longer just sitting on your computer. It's not just sitting in the mainframe. It's changing because now it's moving to all the devices that we now carry. We'll talk a little bit more about each of these megatrends. The first is cloud, this data fragmentation, which you described. We say, well, why? Why is this becoming so important for many of us? Because it's really about the changing of the economics of computing. So I can tell you today, as I said earlier, is I have more apps in the cloud than I do have on-premise. Why are we doing this? I can tell you quite simply, because I cannot manage and run a Salesforce CRM system. I cannot run a CRM as good as Salesforce.com. I could never take, when Siebel would come up with upgrades, right? I could never upgrade my Siebel system fast enough to keep pace. In fact, an upgrade was just me spending money. An upgrade was just throwing resources out the window. Because I cannot do it as cheaply, as fast as Salesforce.com. That's why I use it. And my sales guys don't complain. And they like it, for the most part. Dolly's, yes, she loves it. But the reality is this is why many of us turn to the cloud or compute. Many of us go to Amazon.com because for less than 10 cents a minute, I can get a CPU. 10 cents an hour, a minute. I'm losing it now. But this compute is becoming economically extremely inexpensive for many of us. The issue is that you have data on-premise. You also have data in the cloud. Well, it's not an important question anymore. It's not that you're going to have data on-premise or in the cloud. I'm sure many of you still have mainframes. Many of you still have minis around. We have this hybrid environment. This is a hybrid cloud. The question now is, how do you take and master and manage all the information regardless of where it is? And this is what we're doing as a company. We're helping you harness the first megatrend, cloud. And next is social. This is really the changing role of computing. We describe how, in the past, we've had in fact, many of our transactional systems are becoming what we would call big data systems because they're getting so large. But now it's no longer about just brand management. And what really changes the face of what we do, or the changing role, is how do we understand our brand? How do we know what customer sentiment is? How do we know how to proactively engage customers? This information just isn't in our enterprise. There's several examples, and Zhang Wei will come up and she'll describe how customers are actually looking at this kind of information to understand immediately when they launch a product. What does the customer think about what you're just doing? And how do we gauge, how do we measure the sentiment of a customer? Our role as a company is to help you capture the value of this information from the social networks, from the devices that are generating data, enabling you to get that higher return on data again. And I don't say this to create fear, uncertainty, or doubt, but I do firmly believe, I believe it in my own heart, that if we're not doing this, my successor will. I'll say, not for you, I'll say for my own self, is that I can't figure this out. Informatica will hire another CIO who will figure it out for our company. It's that important for me that I have to understand how we compete more and how do we compete better than anybody else can compete. And then next comes mobile. We have the changing face of computing. I'm sure many of you, 10 years ago, when you walked into the office, the first thing you did, you booted up your computer, you said, what mail did I miss? What mail did I get from the US, or what mail did I get from Europe? And you went into Outlook, and you spend the day there, and every time you walk back, you'd actually check your mail. But as you can see, the stats are that people use it now less than 6 hours per day. They're using Office, the Office suite. But now they're using their productivity tools, their phone, the iPad, over 12 hours a day. This doesn't mean constantly, but you're checking it all throughout the day. And there's over 500,000 apps a day. Examples, I have to do an expense report. Do I want to go and take and manage all my receipts today? I can go in, I go on my little app, I take a picture, that's my receipt image, I put in my details on my phone, I upload it, because half the time I forget about my expenses, and then I'm out thousands of dollars because I'm taking the sales guys out entertaining. So again, this is really, we're changing the mode of computing. And our job as Informatica is to help you get the value of all the data in your enterprise, whether it's on-premise, in the cloud, whether it's in the social networks, or it's taking advantage of your devices and the sensor data that exists today. But these three megatrends are giving rise to what we call the new frontier of innovation. This is big data. Because what's happening is, and I gave you that example, the social networks are extremely important, but most of the things that exist out there, most of the things that are going on, they're trivial, they don't matter to us, but how do you really find that little needle in the haystack? But how do we manage that vast amount of information? This is what big data is all about. Or if you were in biotech, how would you actually capture so much genomic data? Or if you were in semiconductors, we were had a discussion earlier today. How do you actually manage all of this device data, this test data that's coming out, so that you can improve the quality of your chips over time? This is about competition. This is about being better than the next guy. And so when we look at it, and we can use Gartner as a surrogate for some thought leadership, and what they'll say is that 85% of Fortune 500s will be using or experimenting with big data, but most of us will fail. Okay? And this is where we come in as a company. Our goal is to help you succeed. What is big data from our standpoint? So first off, when we look at what's happening is, again, we talk about these three megatrends, but big data is even more. So on the left-hand side, you'll see what we call big transaction data. So this is things that you know. These are your SAPs. This is your Oracles. This is the relational databases, again, extremely large. It's very difficult for you to manage. And then what's also these analytical devices that have emerged. So it all started with Teradata. Teradata invented the category of the analytic engines that we use today. But now you're seeing these new players emerge. You're seeing the Asters, the EMC Greenplums of the world. All of these are starting to grow. And this is about your ability to capture high value. But you even take a company like EMC Teradata. Teradata buys a company called Astrodata. Why? Because somebody like Teradata realizes that they're extremely expensive, and they're trying to find new ways to help offset some of the costs of some of their traditional products that they sell. But they realize that your ability to capture all this transactional data is extremely important for you. Then you have the interaction data. This is what we're talking about. This is the Facebooks of the world, the Twitters, the CNETs. This is your ability to understand what are people saying and how do you capture it and how do you manage it over time. And at the bottom, let's see on the far right here, on the bottom what we see is, this is the other types of machine type of information that's generated. This is what's coming from your cell phone. This would be your geolocation data. This would be data coming from devices. This could be data coming from various sensors. In fact, before I was coming over here, or just reading another article, this was, I think this was a Business Week article. This is about a lady now. She, one of the inventions is she has labels. So if you're in your kitchen, imagine you could actually print out a sensor label at your own house, put it right on your spices or whatever, and there you walk with your smartphone. As you go around, as your smartphone senses the devices, they can read the QR code. It can immediately tell you what you can make with everything you have in your kitchen. Immediately. But now, imagine you're a packaged food company, and the value of having that information and knowing what's in someone's cupboard, and your ability to start thinking about how to create new programs, or how do you influence the recipes, or how do you influence what someone will cook, based on knowing this kind of information. That's the way the world is changing. And again, as I said, if I can't figure it out, my successor is going to. This is becoming that important to us. All this is giving rise to, at the bottom here, these big data processing infrastructures. This is what most of us know as Hadoop. And this is where Google and Facebook, this is where Yahoo, this is where they all made their name on these low-cost, inexpensive infrastructures, but extremely hard to manage. And this is the Hadoop world. Our job as a company is to help you analyze, relate this information, relate that social data, correlate it with all the machine data, and then helping you get value out of your Hadoop clusters in terms of processing. Let's turn our focus now to 9.5, because our goal with 9.5 is taking all of these megatrends, taking Hadoop, and making sure that you are getting the added value to get that return on data for everything that we're providing you today, but more. So first off, if you look at the bottom here, we have a little value chain. Because we think, as a company, we think of ourselves as our ability to help you analyze, discover, cleanse, integrate, access, discover, cleanse, integrate, and analyze information. So we're always trying to improve our capabilities for you, our customer, among these dimensions. So first, in terms of access, We've improved our ability to access more types of information. So at one time we used to say, Informatica, we have near universal connectivity. Now we like to say we have universal connectivity because of the fact that we've come up with our new cloud connectivity toolkit that if we don't have a connector for something, you can build it through a simple toolkit. What many people, we don't actually advertise this as a company, what people don't even realize is that we have something we call the Product Availability Matrix, the PAM. The PAM is over 500,000 combinations of different types of operating systems, databases, applications, app servers, etc. that we can connect to. We're always trying to keep this up to date and manage it. And at the top there, you're seeing even the social data, the device data. And Wei will talk a little bit about the time frame, the timeline for us to make sure that you know when exactly you can have access to all of these types of information. We talked about big transaction data. So it's not just getting access to all the types of data, but it's also getting access to all these new analytic devices, analytic engines that are emerging. So we think of these types of infrastructure, thinking of the SAP HANAs of the world. We're thinking about the new Exadata products that are coming to us from Oracle, or the improvements in what's going on with Teradata. So our goal is to make sure, again, that you have near universal or universal access to all types of systems, making sure that you don't have to know the complexities of how to get data in and out, having to hand code these things. Our goal is to help you automate them and leverage your investment. The next capability in terms of what we call discover is enterprise discovery. What does this mean? For us, this actually, we've had a lot of positive customer feedback from this capability. This is that ability to automatically discover sensitive data that exists in your enterprise. This is that ability to know whether it's a social security number or some type of personal identifiable information or credit card. How do we go out and know where, so I can tell you as a CIO, one of the worst things that goes on is something happens in the enterprise, I don't know about it, and I get fired. Okay? It just hits me. This is that ability to go out and discover the sensitive information that exists in your enterprise. And so what we'll do is we're going to give you an example of how this works. So imagine, this has happened to me multiple times. We go out and we acquire a company. And they first ask me two questions. First ask me one question. One is they want to know my customer list. We want to know our customer list, who exists, and we want to know their customer list. We want to know the common customers, so the common joiner, the outer joiner, who doesn't exist. But what they also want to know is, okay, what sensitive data exists? Because the concern we have is we acquire a company, what we don't want to do is acquire the company, get the data, and all of a sudden not treat it as appropriate as it should be. So what we're also going to do is not only discover our customer relationships, but we're also going to discover the sensitive information that we share. Okay? So let's play this demo.
Introduce you to the new Enterprise Discovery features of Informatica 9.5. Enterprise Discovery is an automated analysis capability, allowing us to increase our knowledge about our data. It also allows us to automatically discover potentially sensitive data, which may require privacy policies to be applied, such as for test data or for compliance initiatives. And finally, it allows us to look across different data sources to build out a complete view of business entities, such as customer or product. In our scenario today, we have two banks, Infobank and Beryl Hinge, which have recently merged and are aware of some customer satisfaction issues. We will use Enterprise Discovery to increase the value and lower the cost of our data by discovering sensitive data and by automatically finding relationships across the two banks' databases. This is the Informatica 9.5 developer tool. On the left, we connect to our metadata repository where we create project folders to store definitions of our data along with business and data quality rules to be applied to that data. Here are some examples of predefined data quality rules provided by Informatica. If I open the Preferences window and select the Informatica menu, I can see that I have a data domain glossary containing a number of data domain rules. A data domain rule can be tested against the data as we perform the data discovery and tells us if the data attribute contains a particular category or domain of data. For example, here is a credit card data domain rule. If I select this rule as part of the data discovery, it will check each attribute to see if it contains credit card data. Notice that data domain rules can be added to one or more data domain groups. A data domain group is a way of categorizing the data based on policies which may need to be enforced, such as for PCI compliance. This discovery process allows us to find this sensitive data, even if it is not documented, to apply the necessary privacy strategies. Here is a folder for Infobank, and here is a source definition in the Beryl Hinge database of a table called Customer Master. I can view the contents of the table, and I will use this table as the basis for discovering customer data within and across my source systems. I will now create a profile model. A profile model allows us to build a data model based on the actual contents of data sources. It also allows us to find relationships across different data sources and different file and database types to build out a complete picture of our customer. After choosing a name for the data profile and choosing the Beryl Hinge Customer Master as my driving table, I then choose objects from other sources to check against. Here I'm choosing tables from the Infobank database. I enter a folder name in which to store these profile resources. Then in the profiling options, I can now choose which of the data domain rules I wish to apply during the profile, and also set a threshold for determining if an attribute actually contains sensitive data. I can also set options to look for primary keys to help identify unique records in a table, and I can set the options to look for foreign keys. Foreign keys are the method used by databases for relating one object to another. This process helps to find those relationships to build out the complete view of our customer. The Informatica platform now creates a data profile for each object I selected, as well as a foreign key profile for discovering relationships between them all. I open the profile and can see if it is still running and if it was successful. If I open the profile, I can now use the outline window to add objects to the canvas. Notice how there are currently no relationships defined between the tables. After the profile is run, I can see a number of results categories. Looking at the relationships overview in the profile results, I can see a visual representation of two sets of entities. The orange circle represents tables where relationships have not been discovered in the data. The blue circle represents a group of tables where the data has suggested that relationships have been found between them. Selecting the foreign key profile for the group of related tables gives me a visual representation of the discovered relationships. Hovering over the relationship lines tells us which of the columns in the tables have been found to have overlapping values. If I right-click a table, I can view its column relationships. The column relationship screen gives me an estimate of how much overlap there is between the two tables, based on statistics gathered during the data profile. If I right-click, I can verify the relationship, at which point a test is executed against a full set of data across both tables to determine if the relationship is as inferred. The set diagram on the right-hand side shows us the extent of overlap between the two data sets. After verifying that the relationship is valid, I can commit that relationship. If I now switch back to the profile overview, we can see that committing the relationship has added a foreign key to the data model. So now, even though this relationship does not exist in the database, we have discovered that a relationship exists and can use this to drive the logic for selecting customer data from the database. If I now switch back to the data profile results summary, we can next look at the data domain discovery. This has used the data domain rules we described earlier to see if there is any potentially sensitive data in the tables we were analyzing. I select credit card, which is part of both PCI and PII domain groups, to see this has been discovered in the account table. I can drill down into the data to see the actual data content. We can see here that credit card numbers have been found in the data. I then verify this rule by checking against the full dataset. And again, I can commit this to the data model. In this example, we can see that the column called Alt ID actually contains tax file numbers. so we can use this information to mask sensitive data from unauthorized access in production or as part of a test data management strategy. We continue this process of verifying and committing what has been automatically discovered to the data model. After we finish the process of verifying and committing the relationships and data domain rules, we are left with a data model based on what has been automatically discovered in the data. This process found undocumented relationships between tables within and across the two different databases. We can use this information to determine how to best access our data to build out a complete view of customer. This process also discovered potentially sensitive data such as credit card and tax file numbers, which may need to be masked in both production and test environments.
So I hope you found that demonstration valuable. This is something that actually hits me in terms of my own role, in terms of when we want to acquire companies, how do we actually look at the relationships and how do we understand the sensitive data that exists. Next capability is around cleanse. And when we look at cleansing information, our belief, it has been and it continues to be that data quality isn't an IT function. It's both an IT and a business function. And in fact, we almost all agree as IT professionals that the business owns the data, IT is the curator. We help you with the data. So what we've done is we've added new workflow capabilities in your overall data governance programs, whether it's an analyst or whether it's a steward, so that we can create workflows, so that as data falls out, people can go in and easily fix, repair, and manage the information across the enterprise. We've also improved our ability to integrate data. Many of you know we've purchased replication capability, and we've gone in and we've improved it even more. So it's not only, there's multiple styles of replication. There's streaming, there's cloning. We've added all styles, and the other thing that's important to us is that we can replicate it across not just homogeneous databases, but heterogeneous databases. We've also added another capability to analyze, this is natural language processing. There's a big category here, but this is really about that understanding, your ability to automatically understand people, places, and things in information. So this goes back to whether it's a tweet, whether it's a comment in a social network. How do you find that one bit of information that's relevant to you? And this is that ability to find this information. So we're going to go back to this example, Beryl Hinch and Infobank, and understand how they've been able to go out and find what we call the needle in the haystack. Let's play the demo.
This demonstration is to introduce you to the new named entity recognition capabilities of Informatica 9.5. Named entity recognition is a subset of a technology called natural language processing. Natural language processing is concerned with deriving meaning from free-format text. Named entity recognition is a special kind of natural language processing which extracts entities from free-format text, with an entity being a thing such as a person, organization, or address. This is the Informatica 9.5 developer tool we saw earlier. Here is the Infobank project folder, and here is a table in our Infobank database called Customer Comment. If I open the table and view the data, I can see that the comment field contains free-format text, but also some useful information, such as company names, postal addresses, email addresses, and phone numbers. It is fairly typical to find these kinds of comment fields within application databases. Other sources of free-format text could be from social media. Informatica Power Exchange for social media provides native high-performance connectivity to social media data in popular networks such as Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. In our example today, we will use Twitter. Twitter is one of the 10 most visited sites on the internet and has been described as the SMS of the internet. It allows its users to send and read text-based updates of up to 140 characters in length, which are known as tweets. Tweets are free-format text and can be informative, amusing, and profound. Twitter users can also use labels called hashtags to tag particular tweets. In this example, a customer has used the fail hashtag to express dissatisfaction with customer service. In our scenario, Infobank has set up a new social media team to monitor Twitter as a new customer service channel. Infobank wants to support its customers via Twitter in the same way as it provides telephone support to its customers. But in order to do this, we will need to be able to extract the relevant information from the tweets. I will build a named entity recognition model in order to do this. In order to create a model to parse Twitter feeds, we'll first need some sample tweets. I have a few examples here, and I'll use these as the basis for creating a new model. If I again expand the pre-built content provided by Informatica, you can see we have something called a content set. A content set contains reusable expressions which can be used for parsing and labeling text data. For example, here is an expression to parse out an Australian tax file number from a string of text. I also have a type of content called probabilistic models. The named entity recognition model will be a probabilistic model. Next, I will create some new content. I will create a probabilistic model from a data source, and the data source in this case will be the sample Twitter file. I browse to the file, and then give the new model a name. I will call it prob_Infobank. We can see the sample data and assign this field as data to the model. We then choose our data sampling options as well as a label for the unassigned data. This gives me an editor for training the probabilistic model. I will create a label for each type of entity I see in the data. First, I will create a label for people or organizations, one for possible Infobank services, one for location, one to flag the hashtags found in the tweets, and finally, one for if we find any money values. I can then go into edit mode, and by simply double-clicking the entities in the text, I can assign them to the relevant labels. Here, I'm assigning Infobank to the organization label. Alternatively, I can display each word in the text separately and assign each word to the relevant label one by one. When we have finished labeling all the fields, then we can save and compile the model. And the model is then ready to use for parsing tweets. Before we do this, however, we need to connect to Twitter to read the data. I create a new object. I will now create a new parser in order to use the model we have built. I pass the uppercase tweets into the parser, and I will now create a new parsing strategy and select the probabilistic matching option, as the named entity recognition model is a probabilistic model. I select the model which we compiled earlier, and then I can view the live data as it is parsed by the model. We can see here that bank services such as bank cards and bank accounts have been found. as well as a variety of different hashtags. Bear in mind that this model was only trained on a very small set of data. The larger the set and variability of the data used, the more accurate the results will be. We now want to see if there are any Infobank tweets. I simply update the query to look for Infobank and then rerun the data viewer. We can see that there is a tweet from Jimmy Rickard complaining about customer service. We will use this tweet to drive a customer service task. I will now rerun the parser against that Infobank tweet. And we can see that the parser has picked out a number of entities, including the fail hashtag. I will use the fail hashtag to create a task with an appropriate message. Here, I'm simply saying to investigate and assign the task as a priority 1. Finally, I will call a web service provided by Master Data Management in order to assign the task to the inbox of the social customer service team.
We didn't have the capability of doing these things before. If we did these things, we would have written thousands of lines of code to figure out how to parse and find this information. But this is something now that with Informatica, you can all easily do with the existing staff that you have in your organization. So let's kind of come back and we'll wrap up. So first and foremost, what you see is Informatica's commitment to you. I'm here in the region 1. If there's anything that you need, I'm here at this event. Don't hesitate to call, ask, email, so I'm more than happy to follow up with you. But the other thing you're seeing is Informatica's commitment to you in terms of your ability to always being able to manage the different types of information that you have in your organization to be even more successful than you are today with the existing tool sets that you have and you already know. We want to make sure that you can maximize your return on data by leveraging the mega trends that we see in society today of social, mobile, cloud, as well as big data. So with that, I do appreciate your time today. I hope you have a great event. I think you're going to see some phenomenal demos here, hear from some great thought leaders that we brought out to you today. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.